For nearly 25 years, I've worked in the charity sector. I've even become a CEO. From the outside, I looked successful, but inside, I thought I was lazy because I struggled to finish things that I started. I thought I was messy because I couldn't keep files and papers or my workspace organized and tidy. I thought I was weird because I would rather be at home than out networking. I was sure that everyone disliked me and felt like at any moment I'd be revealed as the imposter I was sure I was. I was 37 when I discovered the truth that I wasn't any of those things. Finding out that I'm autistic, ADHD, and dyspraxic meant that my life finally made sense. That's my story, and maybe parts of it are yours too. Welcome to Lazy, Messy, Weird. I'm Leah Milner-Campbell, and for most of my life, that's exactly what I thought I was. Lazy, messy, weird. Turns out I wasn't any of those things. I was neurodivergent. If you're listening to this, you might be wondering if you're ADHD, autistic, or otherwise neurodivergent. Or maybe you've just been diagnosed and you're thinking, now what? Either way, you're probably exhausted from trying to be neurotypical when your brain simply doesn't work that way. This podcast is about stopping that impossible task and starting a different one, figuring out how to be neurodivergent, because different isn't a bad word, and neither is neurodivergent. In this first episode, I'm sharing my story, where those labels, lazy, messy, weird, came from, how they shaped my life from childhood through to becoming a CEO, and what finally knowing that I'm neurodivergent has meant for me. If you've ever felt like you're working twice as hard as anyone else just to keep up, or like you're the only one who finds simple things impossible, this episode is for you. I've spent nearly 4 decades thinking that I was lazy, messy, and weird. Now I know instead that I'm neurodivergent. But where did those labels come from? The earliest records I have are from around when I started school. I'm so thankful I still have my school records because they've really helped me to put the pieces together. Year after year, teacher after teacher, class after class, I can see where I got these ideas stuck in my head that I was lazy, that I was messy, that I was weird. In grade 2, my teacher wrote, "Leah is not as motivated to do her best," with the comment, "You can do better." In grade 4, the head teacher summarized, "When you really worked hard, Leah, you get wonderful results. Let's see what happens when you do even more of that good work." In year 7, I was instructed to pay attention to things like punctuality, organizing your work, planning your time, and being task committed, because these are essential skills. The assumption is there in everyone. I wasn't trying hard enough. In grade 3, I was seeing student support services because I was being bullied. And they wrote, "Leah is not keeping up with class assignments and has difficulty concentrating." In grade 4 French class, my teacher wrote she could benefit from work in organizational areas, such as remembering her homework. Over and over again, my failure to complete assignments is well documented. My year 5 English teacher wrote, Leah was required to submit a short story for 2 writing contests. She did not hand in either of the 2 stories. She did, however, start to write a story, but did not complete the piece. In grade 7 drama, my performance was summarized as failure to hand in a final assignment and poor work habits. Year after year, the message was clear. I wasn't trying, and it was my fault. Looking at my reports with what I know now, there are interesting patterns. In grade 7, I was working 2 chapters ahead of my peers in one class, while not handing in assignments in the rest. Nobody asked, why can Leah do this in one area, but not others? In secondary school, I took on extra classes to graduate early, but didn't get good enough grades in the right subject to go straight to university. I did make it to university, and somehow fumbled my way through with an endless string of excuses about my late assignments. I knew I was smart and capable, but clearly I was also lazy. Otherwise, surely I would bother to get things done. I called myself lazy because I didn't know better. I called myself lazy because people told me I was. I believed I was lazy. Until I was 37 and all the pieces clicked into place, and I finally knew that I'm not lazy. I've got ADHD. Having an ADHD brain means that completing tasks the way a neurotypical person would is always going to feel like climbing a mountain to me. No wonder I didn't meet my teacher's expectations about homework, or why I never just learned to get things done on time despite a lifetime of other people's disappointment. No wonder I could work miles ahead when I fell into a hyperfocus. My school reports document my ADHD brain in detail. In grade 3, Leah has days being unsettled and unfocused. The same year, she often engages in writing endless pages of notes, stories, journals, and novels. I had a restless mind instead of a restless body, always reading, thinking, and dreaming. In grade 5, a teacher wrote, Leah must practice active listening when her classmates are sharing. The reports also document my difficulties with organization. In grade 3, one teacher noted that I had done a good job organizing my materials, however, was not willing to do this without a great deal of persuasion. The support service described my work as very untidy, disorganized, and incomplete. The assumptions and judgments are clear throughout the report. One in grade 6 says, more organization and commitment is required, because my disorganization was clearly an indication that I wasn't committed to the class. Difficulty organizing is a feature of my ADHD brain, but I wasn't just disorganized, I was messy. In grade 3, Leah prints rapidly but very untidily. I couldn't pick up a pen without ending up with marks all over my hands and clothes. I still can't. Physical education was the worst. In grade 4, Leah approaches phys ed very cautiously. Frequently, she asks if she can sit out. My memories of this time are being by myself in the corner of the gymnasium, dribbling a basketball, while on the other side of the gym, my class played basketball. My poor coordination meant that I was hit by a softball in year 4 in my nose, and the following year I wrote in my end of year form, I am not participating because I am afraid I will get hurt. It didn't help that I had asthma, but also I was clumsy and uncoordinated. I'm still always bumping into things. These difficulties remain today. I still end up with pen all over me. I can't walk in even the smallest heel without falling over. And every day I end up with new bruises that I can't remember getting. I spill drinks down myself and so on. There is one difference, though. Now I know that I'm not messy. I'm dyspraxic. I was the weird kid. I knew it, and it was apparent in some of my earliest school reports, too. In year 2, my teacher noticed that I had difficulties relating to my peers. This was obviously my fault, as evidenced in year 3. She often sits alone and will not cooperate with her peers. The school support service I went to due to bullying wrote, peer difficulties continue with feelings of jealousy, feelings of not being liked, isolating herself, being bossy, and bothering other children. I might as well add bossy to the title of this podcast because I got that one a lot. I had a single friend throughout elementary school. I do love having friends, but I'm also quite happy with my own company. Something my year 4 French teacher noticed, writing, Leah prefers individual work over group work, aka weird. The school reports capture some of my special interests as well. In grade 4, Leah is an exceptional reader. She will take any opportunity to read, alone, with friends, or aloud to the class. I loved books. I loved the rules of spelling and grammar. I was a sensitive child and prone to outbursts. Now I'd say that I struggle to regulate my emotions, but back then, I was just weird and difficult. In grade 2, one teacher wrote, she is easily upset and angered. Leah needs to learn to control her temper. Another said, at times, Leah's behavior interferes with her learning. In year 3, a tendency to be from easily upset to explosive. And she seeks attention by acting silly and disrespectful. The school support person wrote about my tendency to become very emotional over small and inconsequential things. I was weird because I was different. I overreacted. I sat by myself. I struggled with relationships with peers and teachers. I was defiant and difficult. I was emotional and angry. So this is what I learned about myself growing up. I learned I was lazy and messy and weird. My mental health paid the price for this in my teenage years. I was diagnosed with depression, with anxiety, with an eating disorder. And then things did start to get better. I made friends who were lazy, messy, and weird like me. My love of reading, combined with having internalized all those messages to just try harder and do better, turned into a highly masking workaholic. I made learning my safe place. I skipped grade 8. I finished high school at 16. That's 3 years early in Canada. I did 8 years of post-secondary education, ending up with a master's degree and a job as a researcher. My achievements became proof that I was lazy, because look what I could do when I did bother to try. I developed a dry, self-deprecating humor that dismissed my tendency to be messy as a silly quirk. I found friends who agreed I was weird, but that's what they were looking for in a friend, so it worked. The school reports turned into performance reviews. They all scream, lazy, messy, weird, too. My manager wrote, Leah took on too much and allowed the job to grow too far. The result was miscommunication and confusion. I wrote, I struggle to articulate myself effectively when I become frustrated. My reactions are sometimes beyond what they reasonably should be. One year, one of my actual objectives was to improve my working relationships with colleagues, particularly around identifying potential tension points, being able to read and understand others' perspectives. I was sent to emotional intelligence training after one particularly difficult situation with a former coworker. I was a lazy workaholic. I took on too much, made every project bigger than it needed to be, in a subconscious effort to avoid being told to try harder, refused to do anything good enough. I was messy with my notes, my thoughts, my schedule. I was weird inside, but desperate to learn and perform a version of myself that others would accept. Can you guess what happened next? Burnout. At the time, I realized I got all of my self-worth from my work. So when something went wrong at work and I didn't have that sense that I was doing a good job, I crumbled. This is true, but I can now see the whole picture, how draining the masking was, the huge amount of effort I put into learning what was expected of me, and the exhaustion of constantly getting it wrong. My burnout came soon after significant change in my workplace, and I've never been good with change. It came after I was subjected to an unfairness, and I've never been good with unfairness. My burnout made me lazier. I got so lazy I couldn't get out of bed some days. There are a few days when I couldn't even speak. My burnout made me messier. I couldn't clean up after myself, couldn't cook for myself, couldn't remember where anything was or where I needed to be. My burnout made me weirder. I drove myself to a hospital appointment, arriving 30 minutes early, but missed the appointment because I couldn't find a parking place and spent 45 minutes sobbing in my car before driving home. My burnout was a wake-up call, and I did make several important changes as I recovered. I began to describe myself as a workaholic and to recognize the price I paid for that, and to set more boundaries around work and life. It was a catalyst that led to the ending of a relationship that wasn't working, and I got divorced. It was a catalyst that led to my leaving my job and finding a new one which led to becoming a charity CEO, an achievement that I celebrated by dancing by myself in a bathroom stall. Told you I was weird. I learned a lot from the burnout, but not enough. Being a CEO was great for my independent, bossy side. Finally, I could be in charge of my own work. But the price of this independence, as anyone who has held this role will tell you, is a shocking lack of support. Your boss is a volunteer. Your role is to protect your coworkers, so you don't want to burden them. Your peers are all in the same boat, so can only commiserate and agree how difficult it is. My organization was in trouble. I'd inherited a massive deficit, an organization in need of a lot of change, and I threw myself into the challenge. I've always been great in a crisis, coming up with a plan, great at solving a difficult problem, so I did. And I'm so proud to see where that organization is today, knowing the role that I played in turning things around. But that also had a price, on me and on the team. And I burnt out again. This time was different, though. This time I'd figured out the first piece to my own puzzle, all because I learned what ADHD was. I don't actually remember that first spark. I can only assume and thank the social media algorithms for putting some content that I desperately needed to see in front of me. But soon after, I was Googling, how do I know if I'm ADHD? And buying book after book on the subject. It was months later, after I'd read loads about neurodiversity and done an entire ADHD coaching qualification, that I figured out that I was autistic too. I had thought I knew what autism was, but I'd only been shown how it looks in little boys. Same with ADHD. And that wasn't how it looked in me. For a long time, I thought I had my neurodivergence figured out. I'm ADHD, as we call it, autistic and ADHD. It wasn't until earlier this year, when I was sitting in a webinar I'd organized for a group of parents of neurodivergent kids, when I learned about dyspraxia and actually met and spoke to some dyspraxic adults, when I started to realize this was part of my brain too. So now I know. I'm not lazy. I'm ADHD. I'm not messy. I'm dyspraxic. And I'm not weird. I'm autistic. It wasn't instantaneous. I didn't learn I was autistic and stop feeling weird. I've got nearly 4 decades of feeling weird saved up. It's going to take a while to take in. But what does feel different is how I think about myself. Instead of blaming myself, judging myself, and repeating the words of those teachers to just try harder and do better, I now know to give myself grace. Instead of getting mad at myself for not being like other people, I can be proud of the ways that I'm unique and different, and I have truly come to believe that difference is valuable. I always believed that about other people, but now I can believe it about myself too. Now I know that if I'm struggling to get something done, it's not because I'm lazy. It's because my ADHD brain needs something to be interesting in order to work on it. Important isn't enough. So instead of beating myself up, I can find ways to make my brain interested. I expect myself to be messy and know that it's not because I don't care or I'm not paying attention. I have tools that help me stay organized, and I can be open with my coworkers about what I need. I do still feel pretty weird, but the difference here is I no longer think that being weird is a bad thing. I've even got a t-shirt that says, "Be the weird you want to see in the world." Weird is more interesting, more fun. Weird keeps things from being boring. I know about things like my social battery now and how it needs to be recharged. I do like being around other people, just not always. The biggest difference is now I'm learning about my own brain, which I love because learning has always been my happy place, rather than judging it. And I can't put into words what a difference that makes. I love it so much, I've turned it into my career, working with other neurodivergent people to help them understand their own brain, working with charities and other purpose-driven organizations to help them learn about neurodiversity and do things to become a more inclusive organization where everyone has what they need to thrive and no one needs to burn out trying to be someone that they're not, like I did. If you're listening to this and any of it resonates, if you've been told your whole life that you're not working to your full potential, if your school reports look like mine, years and years of being told that you could do better if you just tried, if you've ever felt like an imposter despite all you've achieved, if you've ever felt like a loner, a weirdo, never quite fitting in, if you were the kid in the corner doing your own thing, if you've worked twice as hard as everyone else and still felt like you're failing, I get it. I really do. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to have a diagnosis. You don't even need to be sure. If something about this story feels familiar, that's enough. That's where I started too. From lazy, messy, and weird to understanding that I'm neurodivergent. From trying to fix what was never broken to understanding how my brain actually works. That's been my journey, and maybe it's one that you can relate to. If you can recognize yourself in my story, wherever you now are on your own journey, you don't have to do it alone. I can work with you to help you understand and embrace your brain so you can be authentically yourself and stop exhausting yourself trying to be someone you're not. You can find out more at my website, leahmilner-campbell.co.uk, and I'll include the link to book a free introductory call in the show notes, if that's of interest. Coming up soon in the next episode, Am I Neurodivergent?, we'll explore what different neurotypes actually look like and how to figure out if this is you. Until then, remember, you're not lazy, messy, or weird. You're just figuring out how to be you, and that's exactly enough.